Welcome to the Thrive Today podcast. I'm Natalie Born, the media host for Thrive Today and the founder of Innovation Meets Leadership. We are a platform for women who lead and believe. And today I am really excited to introduce you to my guest, Tara Nicole Dorsey. And she is a wife, a mom, a writer, and most importantly, a beautiful child of God. She believes that God has created each and every person to live a life full of passion and purpose. Through God's redeeming love and grace, she has turned her greatest tragedy into life's mission to see others healed and enable them to receive God's promises for their life. And man, you're in for such a treat today because she has written a brand new book. And I'm going to have her hold that beautiful book up and tell us a little bit about it. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so very much. Yes, I wrote Blessed to Bear Fruit, Devotions for the Mom in Waiting, just based on my journey to motherhood and some devotions that, in my opinion, will help women really heal and grow in their faith so that they can receive the blessing of motherhood.
Well, what's so interesting about this book is honestly, you've been through a lot. You've been through some grief. This book was birthed out of some grief that you personally went through. Do you want to talk a little bit about what motivated you to actually sit down and write this devotional?
Yes. So I've always been a writer my entire life. I was the 5-year-old writing poems. And, as soon as I learned how to put words together, I did that. And so naturally, I've always been a journaler. Is that a word? Journaler?
Yes, totally. It has to be.
So I received my first journal when I was 11 years old. And so it's really interesting going back over time and seeing what my 11-year-old self thought. But it just became this way that I processed my joy and my trauma. And then when I met the Lord in my 20s, it just became a way that I expressed my relationship with Him, very similar to David in the Bible, all of those different things. And so in my first year of marriage, my husband and I became pregnant. And then 8 months later, 8.5 months later, our daughter passed away. She was stillborn,
Wow.
and we had to deliver at 43, or excuse me, 34 weeks. And the only way I knew how to process was through writing. And so that's how I came to creating this journal, this devotional journal. That's what I've been calling it because I have different writing prompts. So it's kind of bridging those two worlds together of being a writer and then journaling and helping people process through that grief and that pain. And I continued to write after the Lord blessed me to become pregnant again, just to increase my faith. And that's how I got here.
Okay, wow. Well, so I was like, didn't expect to cry this early, but let's talk about your family now and then we'll go backwards. So tell me, let's fast forward into today so people can kind of know.
Yeah. So it's so crazy because just 2 weeks ago, my two youngest kiddos had birthdays within the same week. Yes. So lots of fun over here. My youngest, Phoenix, is 5 years old, a 5-year-old son. And then I have a daughter named Sophia, and she is 8 years old, just turned 8. And then our oldest, David, is 9, and he'll be 10 over the summer. And he was the one who was the first baby after loss. And he's actually named after my husband's brother, who unfortunately passed away 3 months after we got married. So, he's also a promise, and he's restoration in so many ways for us, but also for the family, because we've been through it.
Yes. Oh
And
my God.
so, yes, my husband, Joe, he had double grief, and so a lot of me writing as well is because he was grieving his brother, so it wouldn't have been proper to go to him to try to process. And so I had to go to the Lord and through my journal process what I was going through when we lost our daughter. Her name is Phoebe. So Phoebe would have been 11 years old this year.
Wow.
So it's been a minute.
Wow. I would imagine that as people are listening to this episode, they're thinking like, yeah, maybe not the exact same story, but probably some memory of grief is coming up for them. So I'm wondering, how would you encourage women to, honor that grief journey, but also allow them to pursue their dreams within it? I mean, that can sometimes be hard. Like we can almost get stuck with that grief and not allow it to help us move forward. It's almost like we get kind of frozen in time, if you will.
I feel like the quickest way to get frozen is to not deal with it. Is to act like, oh, it's over here. Yes, I lost this person that I loved or this opportunity. Because sometimes grief doesn't come in the form of losing a person, it's losing an opportunity, feeling like you're not in the right space in life. And so you have to acknowledge it. You have to sit with it. You have to become well acquainted. You have to go through it. There's no other way. You can't go around it. And I think also you have to recognize that it's okay to have seasons. So for me specifically, I have always been extremely ambitious in my career, in my journey, and then getting saved. A lot of that changed for me. God helped me to reorganize my priorities. He sat me down for a season. He said, "Actually, I need you to come home and be with your children. I don't need you to focus on your career. I need you to focus on becoming a mother, loving them, learning to love yourself, and also dealing with this grief that you sat on a shelf that's keeping you stuck here in your mind and just in the physical realm too. So it's like, don't set it on the shelf and just act like, oh, that's a pretty little traumatic box over there that I've decorated and adorned with all of these different things. Open the box, dig inside, and see what God has to reveal because it's pain, but it's also his purpose that he reveals to you through that pain.
Wow. Well, and I think that's so important for us to process these things. I mean, these things can be so challenging and hard to really want to look at. And I think that's part of the journey, even saying yes, that I'll be willing to look at it. It's interesting. I'm actually processing through some grief with a Christian counselor right now, a really amazing woman, Cindy Amaya. She's a friend, but somebody who's walking me through some stuff that's, probably like 15, 16 years old and just saying, "Hey,
Mhm.
let's look at it and let's not put it in that little compartment over there." But that journey is so hard, but so fulfilling as you start to realize that you've almost been living a shell of yourself because you haven't been able to deal with that. When you think about, the loss of a child, I mean, how did that influence your sense of self? How did that influence like the personal and professional you when as you kind of had to walk through that and deal with that?
Mm, Initially, it influenced me by putting on a mask, kind of like what you were saying, that shell. It was like, "Okay, I don't wanna be vulnerable with these people because I have to show up strong at work. I can't show up broken and sad because also I'm a woman, and so they're probably looking at me like, 'Okay, she just can't get it together,' and so it became this mask, like this armor that I put on, but it's so crazy because the armor, it made me think of, when David went to fight Goliath and he put on Saul's armor, so it didn't even fit, it was of no use. And so then I had to climb out of the mask and realize that this is an opportunity for me to show up as my true authentic self. And what people want is authenticity. And once I started doing that and even started sharing the fact that I have lost a child, the craziest thing happened. It was me too. And it was side conversations. It was like, this happened to me 15 years ago, in one case, 40 years ago, and I've never dealt with it. And I love how you're so bold and you talk about it. So then I started realizing this is bigger than me. It's not gonna hold me back in my career because I wrote a book about, healing after child loss is actually an opportunity to open doors and conversation, not only with women, but also men who are walking their wives through this journey of, and I even put it in terms of grief from losing a child, but grief from empty arms of trying to have a child through infertility. It's
Wow.
both and.
Wow. It's so interesting you mentioned men. They kind of sometimes get left out of this story and they're grieving and, I think obviously women are front and center because they've carried the baby or maybe it is infertility and both are trying and oftentimes we do forget about the story of the man and what he personally is going through and what he is experiencing through this. And so I love that we're bringing that into the equation because there's healing that has to happen there too. And oftentimes we don't even talk about that. And so I so appreciate you bringing that forward. And obviously your husband had to walk through this journey with you and hold your hand, but he was probably hurting deeply and aching over all this as well.
Yeah, there was a moment when we early on, and again, we're 11 years, past this now, but early on, we really didn't talk about it. And I remember one moment when we did. And he was like, "Tara, I have not even addressed my grief with Phoebe because I'm still grieving my brother." And it was so eye-opening to me because, of course, like, for the women, and of course, was, like, child loss so early on, we were the ones carrying them. So our husbands were there, they were a participant, but the experience was mostly ours. Not to mean that it didn't affect them, but I noticed the magnitude of the difference there, and not to say that it lessened his grief for his daughter. I think his grief was opened up with our children as they got older, because then you're looking at the empty seat and what could have been. And so that's the difference with the grief as well. It's a grief of not what happened, but also what could have been and what
Yeah,
am I out on, and how would my children now, their personalities be different if David actually wasn't the oldest child,
right.
he was the second oldest, you know?
Yeah, it's those lost dreams that you're having to process through as well. It's not just the trauma, which that is a lot of trauma to lose someone, but then the what if, what could have been, and just how I think was so beautiful and so healing is you taking the time to put it in a book form so that others who either haven't dealt with it or maybe will go through this can pick this up and have a guide to articulate and to talk about what they're feeling, what they're and to know they're not alone. I think there's something so important about us understanding that we're not alone. And so if people don't speak up and say, "Hey, I've been through this," then people can sometimes isolate and feel like they're the only one. And I think there's something so powerful about us saying, "You're not alone."
I think we also have to trust the timing of it too, because it's so interesting you say like, "Hey, you're addressing this thing that happened like 15, 16 years ago." You're probably addressing it now because that Natalie wasn't ready to address it. And so, like, even for this, I'm saying it took me 11 years to really I started writing as soon as when I was still in the hospital room. I'm writing in my phone because 'cause I'm, like, going at it with the Lord, right? And I had it all written. This was completed in 2017.
Wow.
Yeah, 2017, and it took 8 years to get it published, and that was because the Tara in 2017 couldn't hold space for the women who I'm now speaking to today, and so
Wow.
it's like now I have those conversations with women, and they're weeping, and I'm sitting here holding space for them. Even 5 years ago, I would have been sitting there thinking about my own pain and not allowing them the space to feel their pain and heal from their pain. So that's why I'm like, okay, yes, you go through this, but also trust the timing. And I
Mhm.
even say in here, this is 10 devotions that I would love for you to go over in 10 weeks, but it might take you 10 years, and that's okay.
Wow. Well, I would love to talk a little bit about thinking about women who might be going through a grieving process. How do they show up professionally? I mean, you touched on that a little bit, but I've been through a divorce and at one point was a single mom, and I was having to still come to work while dealing with the loss of a marriage, right? While dealing with the loss of dreams, the loss of what could have been, all of these things. And still having to show up every day for work because,
Mm.
I had a child that had to feed and bills that needed to be paid. And so how are you able to just navigate these different worlds? And I know at one point God kind of pulled you aside and said, "Hey, it's time to sit down and rest." But how are you able to show up, and how can people show up in these seasons where they're dealing with extreme grief?
Yeah. I think for me, what I had, and I know it's a blessing, and I pray that everyone can have this, is I had a trusted confidant at work. So I had someone who I could go to and say, I only have 10% today. And those were the days where it's like, all right, go ahead and clear your schedule, work on some heads down work where you don't have to engage with people, those types of things. I think it's really key that relational aspect at work. I know some of us can get into, well, I'm just going there to like do this job and then I'm going home. I don't need to have a relationship with them. But I think that actually shortchange yourself more in the end, and of course, trust is built over time. And so it depends on like, where you are, but having that trusted confidant where you can really say, I got about 25 in me. Having flexibility helps. And I know everyone doesn't have that either, but you have to be vocal because the other way it can show up, if you're not honest with it, next thing you know, you're in a meeting and someone says something that rubbed you the wrong way, And you might, pop off a little bit and you didn't wanna show up that way, but they don't know what's behind that is, "I don't have it in me to be here today. My mask is already, like, cracking because it wasn't sturdy enough anyway." And so, my number one piece of advice is to have a trusted confidant that you can be honest with, that can help you navigate that can advocate for you, that can say, "Oh, they can't come to this meeting today. They're working on something else." Whatever you have to do to get that set up, I think is key.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I remember having that as well. Just one person that I could,
Mhm.
pull aside into the conference room and say, today's not it. Today is not it. And I need you to cover for me. I need help, or I just need to go home, but I'm going to still get
Mhm.
this stuff done. I just need to do it on my terms. And just having somebody that knows what's going on in your world. And that can feel very scary for people. But I feel like it's so necessary to have someone helping you just walk through the side of work that you just kind of have to get through.
Yes.
But they're there to kinda guide and lead you, and I love that because that feels really scary to some people, but I think
Yeah,
it's so
vulnerability.
necessary. Yeah,
Yeah. It's like that weakness, and, that's all a lie. Weakness can be meekness. It doesn't have to be that I'm not strong enough or equipped or smart enough or anything like that. It just means I need a moment. And sometimes that's all it is. My mom is actually the one who helped me through that quite tremendously. I think of her, she endured so much. She has multiple sclerosis, and she was working through not even understand what was happening in her body at the time, and then having to make the decision to step away from work full time later on in her career. But there were so many years where she had to show up and put the smile on when she was in debilitating pain. And so one of the pieces of advice that she gave me is for example, if you're having one of those days where you just cannot get up, you don't even wanna put on clothes, you don't wanna, like, put makeup on, anything like that, she's like, "Allow yourself to, like, lay down as best you can, because you have life, you have kids. Do those things that you have to live, right? But rest." And she said, "But only do that for, like, 3 days max, and on the 3rd day, get up, open the curtains, take a shower, wash your face, and you get back to it. And if in 3 weeks, you need another 3 days, take that 3 days." Now, I know it's not like you can actually, like, take off, but maybe those are the 3 days where you go to the confidant, and it's like, "Hey, I was looking at my schedule for this week. I actually need to shift some things around." You have to navigate it in different ways when you have a career and, things are depending on you, and that's understandable, but also take the 3 days.
it's so good, and it's that idea of rest, I think, is hard for women sometimes, but when we're going through something, let's think about that, like, all the energy in our body is going towards helping us cope or deal with this thing that we're going through, so we are gonna be more tired, we are going to require more rest, and just preparing people for that in advance. I think what often happens is when we don't have those conversations, people can start creating narratives about us. "Oh, this person's not engaged anymore. Oh, this person's checked out. Oh, they're probably looking for another job. They might be interviewing elsewhere." And if none of that's true, like, make sure you check in and give them just the information that they need to understand what you're going through. And I love that we're having this conversation because women spin a lot of plates. And I think the biggest fear for women is dropping one or several of those plates. And you know what? I'm just going to be honest. Sometimes you just got to let some of those plates fall
Yeah.
because you are not a circus person and you cannot spin all those plates. Like, you've got to let them fall and you've got to let other people catch some of those plates for you. And I think I would to add to what you're saying is have somebody like that at work and then have somebody like that in your personal life too, and that they can help you catch some of the personal stuff. My parents were that for me when I was going through my situation, several many, many years ago, 15, 16 years ago, right?
Mhm.
They were the people that were my anchor, my backup, whether it was through prayer or just helping me with my little one at the time. They really rallied and showed up for me. And so there are people that are waiting to show up for you, but they just have to know that you need them.
That part. I think, especially as women, we don't wanna ask for help because we're supposed to be able to do it all, especially in the age of social media where, like, "This is how I do it all." Actually, you don't. Let's be real, you don't. But asking for help will save you so much more time than suffering through trying to do it all. And then now, where if you ask for help, you would have been able to manage 3 plates. Now you've dropped them all and you only have 1, and then there's losses happening over there with the other ones that fell, and people want to help you. I think I didn't realize that early on, like, people want to help, and the hardest thing is, a lot of times when you go through something a traumatic event, let's say it's an event, there's people that rally around in those first 2 weeks, and they're like, "Hey, I'm here for you, whatever you need me to do," those types of things, and then there's the people that stay around you week 3 and beyond, and they check in, and they remember your days, the hard days, right? And those are the people that you should go to when you do need that help. Not the 2 weekers. They're just gonna be there for a little bit. They're gonna send you flowers, they're gonna send you food, they're gonna text you 2 weeks,
Yeah.
3 to 4, 3 and beyond. 10 years later, I still get texts from people on my daughter's birthday who call her by name.
That's
That's
so beautiful.
She has a name, Phoebe, that's her name.
Yeah.
You can say her name. There's purpose
Wow.
too. So, yeah, that I think the asking for help is so key.
Yeah. And, I love that you said she has a name. I mean, I think about how cool it is one day when you guys get to heaven many, many, many years from now,
Yes.
and you get to meet her and how incredible that moment's gonna be. Like, that's like, we don't mourn like the world mourns because we have a bigger hope, and that hope is heaven, and we know we're gonna see our loved ones there, and it really I don't know how excited you are, but, like, I just feel like that's so cool, like, one day you're
Mhm.
gonna get to, like, "Hey, what have you been doing up here? What's Jesus like?
No.
Tell me all about it."
I've only had maybe 2 visions or dreams of her, and it's so like, some of it was so special, like, one time and it's the weirdest thing, but I'll say it because people will understand. Since she was stillborn, I did get to hold her, but I never got to see her with her eyes open. And one of my questions was, "Well, Lord, what color are her eyes?" And so, God's so sweet now that I don't have to wait. He let me know in like this crazy vision. I don't know if we have enough time to even go into this one, but he told me her eyes were the same as mine.
Oh,
And so
and y'all's family has the most beautiful eyes, so that's a
he
real question, like, what color are her eyes?
It just was, like, so random, and so only my youngest son has my eye color from the kids, the other have light brown, but I was like, "Oh, wow," and even there was a moment, like, looking in the mirror, and I saw not my reflection, but I saw her as, like, a young adult one time, like, just beautiful things, sweet things that the Lord has allowed me to experience, and even our children have dreamt of her, like, playing on clouds and different things like that, and so I am very excited, and I'm just so grateful that the Lord gives us those little moments, like those peeks into heaven to show us that there's more to come.
That's so beautiful, and I love that they've gotten to dream about their sister. Well, and that you honor Phoebe's memory by they know about her, you guys talk
Mm.
about her, like, it's like you did not waste that moment by packing it away in a back closet, like, you celebrate her and her life, and I think that's the most beautiful way we can deal with grief, which is really hard, and I'm sure you didn't get there overnight, but yeah, I'm sure, it wasn't like that the first year or 2, but, like, just the fact that you've been able to get to that place is it's what you want for everybody, that they can process through hard things and that, yes, it does sometimes take years, like you said, to get to the other side of it, but how beautiful it can be to take the very thing that probably Satan intended to take you out, and God uses it for your good.
He wasted nothing.
Yeah, so beautiful. Well, tell people where they can find your book, where can they find you, where can they follow you, and of course, pick this beautiful book up. Yeah, hold it up one more time because it's so beautifully designed. Did you design it?
I did, I
So
did.
pretty.
This is this was y'all, this was the moment where the Lord was like, "You're going to get this done." And I designed it over a weekend because I felt so much urgency to get this message out after all this time, and now I'm seeing the fruit of it in my own personal life. So, where you can pick it up is on my website, blessedtobearfruit.com. My Instagram is at blessedtobearfruit, but it's also on Amazon. For those who wanna buy it through my website, I will personally sign it and send it. So that does take a little bit longer than the Amazon option, but if you want it more quickly, you can go get it there in 2 days via Prime, but it's also an ebook version. There's so much of this that I want out, and the main purpose of getting this message out is my goal with this is to create a nonprofit to celebrate these women, to love on these women, and to host retreats for them, healing retreats that are completely free to the women attending. And so there's more that I'm doing to fundraise and all those things in the coming weeks. And so I think that's why I had to take that weekend just to like, I had this message for 8 years just sitting there, right? And then God was like, now, now. But
Wow.
also, I get to be ready.
That's beautiful. And Tara, I just want to say that, oh, it's choked up. This is beautiful. And I love the extension of what God is going to do. And I want to say this to all of our listeners. There are many of you that as you're listening to this, either God is calling you to deal with grief and it's time to go through that. But then I feel like there's another set of people that God has said now and you're still waiting. And I hope that Tara today is a just an example for you that if God calls you to do it, step out in faith and do it because somebody needs to hear your story. Somebody needs to hear your voice and you are there to provide the message that they need to hear that God's put in your heart. And so thank you for inspiring us today. And I love your beautiful story of Phoebe and just how much of a light that she is going to be to other people that have never met her before as they read your book and hear her story and your story of what you guys have walked through. And gosh, what a beautiful story. And thank you. I don't know that I knew all the details. I did know a little bit, but I didn't know as much as you shared today. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Her name actually means bright shining one.
Wow.
And so I think that's why God has been on me all these years to get this message out because this is his light shining through her.
It's gorgeous. I love it. That's so beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time today.
My pleasure.
All right. Well, wow. Okay. So, ladies, I hope that you'll take a moment to get into community. This was such a beautiful story, but it's also an example of what it's like to walk in community with other people. We all go through things and we need a community around us. Head over to thrivetoday.com to learn more. And as you walk into this next week, I want you to think about what areas of grief do I need to hand over to God or what ideas has God said now, and I'm still sitting on the sidelines waiting? All right, go get them this week, and we'll see you next time.